On a freezing Christmas night, a girl points to a huddled figure on the sidewalk and asks her millionaire father, "Dad, why is she sleeping on the street?" He tries to ignore it, but something about that scene paralyzes him, and the past begins to weigh on him. As he approaches, he discovers a young woman with a baby in her arms and alarming signs of hypothermia. What begins as an act of compassion reveals secrets capable of changing everything he believed about pain, love, and belonging. The bitter December wind whipped through Manhattan, sending snowflakes dancing beneath the city lights. Ethan Winters pulled his coat tighter around himself as he guided his 8-year-old daughter Lily through the bustling crowd at Rockefeller Center. 2 years had passed since he'd lost his wife Claire to a sudden illness, but holidays remained a minefield of memories. Still, for Lily's sake, he maintained their traditions. "Daddy, it's so beautiful," Lily exclaimed, her face illuminated by the massive Christmas tree towering above them, a dazzling spectacle of lights against the night sky. Her excitement was the only warmth Ethan had felt in weeks. "It sure is, sweetheart," he replied, forcing enthusiasm into his voice while checking his watch. As CEO of Winters Architectural Design, one of New York's premier firms, he had a mountain of year-end reports waiting on his desk at home. But tonight was for Lily. "Can we walk around a little more, please?" Lily tugged at his sleeve, her bright blue eyes so like her mother's pleading beneath her knitted hat. "Just a little longer," Ethan conceded with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. At 37, he had achieved everything he'd professionally dreamed of. The corner office in his own firm, the Central Park West penthouse, financial security that would last generations. Yet the emptiness Claire left behind made his accomplishments feel hollow. They wandered through the plaza, Lily chattering about her Christmas list while snowflakes collected on her eyelashes. The decorations, the music, the families laughing together, it all stabbed at Ethan's heart. 2 years, and the pain remained stubbornly present, merely changing forms rather than diminishing. As they headed toward Fifth Avenue to catch a cab home, Lily suddenly stopped. "Daddy, look," she whispered, pointing toward a bus shelter half a block away. At first, Ethan didn't see anything unusual, just another city bus shelter adorned with holiday advertisements. Then he noticed the huddled figure on the bench, a young woman perhaps in her early 20s, crouched against the bitter cold. She wore a thin coat that provided little protection against the December chill, and in her arms was a small bundle she cradled protectively. "She has a baby," Lily whispered, her voice tinged with concern beyond her years. Ethan hesitated. New York had taught him caution, to walk past the countless souls in need, to donate to charities instead of engaging directly. But something in Lily's expression made him pause. "She looks cold." "Daddy, like when I forgot my coat at school." Lily was already unwrapping her own scarf, a cheerful red cashmere that Claire had given her on their last Christmas together. "Lily, wait," but his daughter was already approaching the shelter, scarf extended like an offering. Ethan hurried after her, protective instincts flaring. As they got closer, he saw that the young woman was beautiful beneath the exhaustion etched on her face. Her dark hair fell in tangled waves around pale cheeks, flushed with cold. She couldn't have been more than 23. "Hi," Lily said softly. "I thought your baby might be cold." The woman looked up, startled. Her eyes were a striking amber color, wide with surprise and wariness. The bundle in her arms stirred slightly. That's very kind," she responded, her voice hoarse. "But you need your scarf." "I have another one at home," Lily insisted, already wrapping the soft fabric around the bundle. "See? Now he won't be cold." Ethan noticed the woman's hands were bare and trembling. When she shifted slightly, he caught a glimpse of the infant's face, impossibly small with a dusting of dark hair. "The baby couldn't have been more than a few weeks old." "Miss, are you all right?" Ethan asked, though the answer was painfully obvious. She nodded too quickly. "We're fine. Just waiting for the bus." "The last bus on this route left an hour ago," Ethan said gently. "And it's dropping below freezing tonight." A flash of panic crossed her face before she composed herself. "We'll be fine," she repeated, but her voice wavered. Ethan noticed her lips had a bluish tint and she was shivering violently. Medical training from his college days resurfaced. These were signs of hypothermia. The baby, though bundled, was at even greater risk. "I'm Ethan, and this is my daughter Lily," he said, making a decision. Can we give you a ride somewhere? A shelter or a friend's place, perhaps? The young woman pulled the baby closer. I don't need charity, she murmured, though her body betrayed her with another violent shiver. What's your baby's name? Lily asked, seemingly oblivious to the tension. After a pause, the woman answered, Noah, his name is Noah. He looks like a snowflake, Lily declared, all wrapped up and special. A ghost of a smile touched the woman's lips. That's a nice way to think of him. I'm not offering charity, Ethan said carefully. Just a warm ride. For Noah's sake, if not your own. The mention of her son seemed to reach her. She looked down at the infant, whose tiny face was beginning to redden from the cold despite Lily's scarf. Just a ride, she finally conceded. Ethan helped her up, alarmed at how light she was, how violently she trembled. I didn't catch your name, he said, as they walked toward the street to hail a taxi. Olivia, she replied after a moment's hesitation. Olivia Hayes. In the warmth of the cab, the contrast between the heated interior and the freezing street seemed to overwhelm Olivia. She swayed slightly, her eyelids fluttering. Where to? The driver asked. Ethan hesitated. Where would you like us to take you, Olivia? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her eyes were becoming unfocused, a concerning symptom of hypothermia. I don't. There's nowhere. Lily, sensing the woman's distress, placed a small hand on her arm. You can come to our house. Right, Daddy? We have hot chocolate, and the Christmas tree is so pretty. Ethan made a split-second decision that would change all their lives. Central Park West and 72nd, he told the driver, giving his own address. As the taxi pulled away from the curb, Olivia seemed to struggle with the decision, but lacked the energy to protest. Noah stirred in her arms, making tiny sounds of discomfort. May I? Lily asked, gesturing to the baby. After a moment's hesitation, Olivia allowed Lily to gently touch Noah's tiny hand. The baby instantly wrapped his fingers around Lily's index finger. He likes me, Lily exclaimed, delighted. He knows kindness, Olivia whispered, her eyes meeting Ethan's for a brief electric moment. During the ride, Olivia revealed fragments of her story in halting sentences. Once an art student at NYU, she'd been disowned by her conservative family when she decided to keep her baby after her boyfriend abandoned her. She'd been moving between shelters and friends' couches until even those options had run out. The shelters are full for Christmas, she explained softly. We were going to try the bus station tonight. Ethan felt something twist inside him, a feeling he hadn't experienced since Claire's passing. Compassion, but also something more complex. When they arrived at his building, the doorman's eyebrows shot up at the sight of Olivia and the baby, but Ethan's pointed look prevented any comment. The elevator ride to the penthouse was silent, tension mixing with the Christmas music playing softly through the speakers. Stepping into Ethan's spacious penthouse, Olivia froze in the entryway. The stark contrast between her circumstances and the luxury before her seemed to overwhelm her. I shouldn't be here, she whispered. Clutching Noah tighter, the penthouse was tastefully decorated for Christmas, with a 10-foot tree by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. The lights of the city spread out below, like fallen stars on the snow-covered landscape. We have a guest room with a crib, Ethan said, trying to sound casual. It was Lily's when she was smaller. You and Noah can get warm, get some rest. Olivia remained in the doorway, one foot literally poised to step back into the hallway. Why are you doing this? Ethan considered his answer carefully. The truth was he wasn't entirely sure himself. Because it's Christmas Eve and no one should be out in that cold. Especially not with a baby. Lily, with a child's directness, added, and because you looked sad like Daddy sometimes looks. People shouldn't be sad at Christmas. Olivia's amber eyes filled with tears she seemed determined not to shed. Just for tonight, she agreed finally. We'll be gone in the morning. We can talk about tomorrow when it comes, Ethan replied. For now, let's get you both warm. As he led them down the hallway to the guest room, Ethan caught his reflection in a mirror and was startled to see something in his expression he hadn't witnessed in 2 years. Purpose. Dawn broke over Manhattan, painting the snow-covered city in hues of rose and gold. Ethan woke earlier than usual, the events of the previous night flooding back as consciousness returned. For a moment, he wondered if he'd dreamed the entire encounter. The young woman and her infant son at the bus shelter, bringing them back to his penthouse. but the sound of running water from the guest bathroom confirmed it had been real. He moved quietly through the apartment, not wanting to disturb Lily, who was still asleep. When he reached the kitchen, he stopped short. Olivia stood at the sink, her back to him, washing what appeared to be a baby blanket and her own worn clothes. She had draped them carefully over the radiator to dry. The kitchen counter had been wiped clean, and a pot of coffee was brewing. A simple gesture that seemed to speak volumes about her character. She turned when she sensed his presence, pushing a strand of dark hair behind her ear. In the morning light, with some color returned to her face, Ethan could see she was even more striking than he had realized the night before. "I hope you don't mind," she said softly, gesturing to the clothes drying by the radiator. "I like to earn what I use." "You didn't have to do that," Ethan replied, oddly moved by her attempt to maintain dignity in such circumstances. "Yes, I did." Her amber eyes met his with unexpected steadiness. "For myself." There was something in her gaze that spoke of pride despite her circumstances, a quiet determination that reminded him with a pang of Claire. His late wife had possessed that same resilience, that refusal to be defined by limitations. "How's Noah this morning?" he asked, pouring himself a cup of the coffee she'd made. "Better, warmer." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "He's still sleeping." The silence that followed wasn't entirely uncomfortable. Ethan found himself studying her as she moved around his kitchen with careful precision, as if trying to take up as little space as possible. Her clothes, a simple sweater and jeans he'd found for her from Claire's old things, were too large, making her seem even more fragile. "You said you were an art student?" he asked finally. Olivia nodded, her expression shifting. "Was. Almost finished my degree at NYU when..." She glanced toward the guest room where Noah slept. "Life changed." "Your family," Ethan began, but was interrupted by the elevator chime announcing an arrival. Mrs. Jenkins, his housekeeper of 15 years, stepped into the apartment with her usual brisk efficiency. She stopped abruptly at the sight of Olivia, her expression transitioning from surprise to suspicion in the span of seconds. "Mr. Winters," she said, her tone carefully neutral despite the questions in her eyes. "I wasn't aware we had a guest." "Mrs. Jenkins, this is Olivia Hayes," Ethan said. "Olivia and her baby will be staying with us for a bit." The older woman's eyebrows inched higher. Mrs. Jenkins had been with the family since before Lily was born and had stepped up considerably after Claire's passing. Her protectiveness toward Ethan and Lily was understandable, if sometimes overbearing. "I see," Mrs. Jenkins said in a tone that suggested she didn't see at all. "Will I be preparing breakfast for 4 then?" "That would be wonderful, thank you," Ethan replied, trying to communicate with his eyes that this wasn't a moment for questions. Mrs. Jenkins nodded curtly and moved to the refrigerator, but the tension in her shoulders spoke volumes. Olivia, sensing the discomfort, quietly excused herself to check on Noah. The moment she left the kitchen, Mrs. Jenkins turned to Ethan, keeping her voice low. "Mr. Winters, I don't mean to overstep, but do you know anything about this young woman? These days there are so many schemes. A handsome widower with your resources..." "She was freezing at a bus shelter with her infant son on Christmas Eve," Ethan interrupted, surprised at the edge in his own voice. "What would you have had me do, Mrs. Jenkins?" "Leave them there." The housekeeper's expression softened slightly. "Of course not. But temporary assistance and bringing strangers into your home are different matters. Have you considered what Miss Lily might think, seeing a young woman in her mother's clothes?" Ethan hadn't considered that detail. The clothes he'd offered Olivia had indeed been Claire's, items he hadn't been able to part with during his grief-stricken attempts to clear out her things. He was saved from responding by the patter of small feet as Lily appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas, her hair tousled from sleep. "Is Olivia still here?" she asked hopefully. "And baby Noah?" "Yes, sweetheart, they're in the guest room," Ethan replied, relieved by his daughter's obvious enthusiasm. Lily's face lit up. "Can I go see them, please?" Before Ethan could answer, Olivia reappeared with Noah in her arms. The baby was awake now, his dark eyes taking in his surroundings with the curious intensity of newborns. Lily immediately gravitated toward them. "Can I hold him?" she asked, looking up at Olivia with pleading eyes. Olivia hesitated, then nodded. "Sit down first," she instructed gently. Once Lily was settled on the sofa, Olivia carefully placed Noah in her arms, showing her how to support his head. The tenderness of the moment wasn't lost on Ethan. Watching his daughter cradle the infant with such care, something shifted inside him. For 2 years, their home had been a place of quiet grief, of voices lowered and emotions carefully managed. Now suddenly it felt alive again. Mrs. Jenkins observed the scene with a complex expression before returning to breakfast preparations. Ethan could read the concern in her rigid posture, but he appreciated her restraint. Later he knew there would be a more thorough conversation. Over breakfast, Lily chatted excitedly about showing Noah the Christmas tree and all her favorite toys. Olivia ate sparingly, despite Ethan's encouragement to have more. He noticed how her eyes constantly returned to Noah, checking on him even as she engaged in conversation. "What are your plans, Olivia?" Mrs. Jenkins asked finally, her tone carefully casual. The question hung in the air. Olivia set down her fork, her expression closing like a door. "We'll be out of your way after breakfast," she said quietly. "I appreciate the shelter for the night." "No," Lily protested immediately. "You can't go. It's Christmas." Ethan found himself agreeing with his daughter, though for reasons he couldn't fully articulate. "There's no rush," he said. "At least stay through the holidays. The weather's supposed to get worse and the shelters will still be crowded." Olivia looked at him searchingly, as if trying to decipher his motives. Why would you do that for strangers? It was Mrs. Jenkins who surprised them all by answering, "Because Mr. Winters is his father's son," she said with a sigh that suggested both exasperation and affection. "Robert Winters never could turn away someone in need either." Something passed between the housekeeper and Olivia then, a subtle assessment, neither entirely trusting nor entirely antagonistic. Finally, Mrs. Jenkins added, "The guest room has its own thermostat. Babies need consistent warmth." It was as close to approval as they were likely to get, and Ethan felt oddly grateful for it. Olivia seemed to understand the significance of the comment as well, her shoulders relaxing slightly. "Just until after Christmas," she conceded finally. "If you're sure." Later, after Mrs. Jenkins had left and Lily was showing Olivia the Christmas decorations around the apartment, Ethan retreated to his home office. He found himself unable to focus on work, his thoughts returning to the young woman in his living room. There was something about her story that haunted him, not just the circumstances of her present hardship, but the way she carried it, with a dignity that refused pity. On impulse, he opened his laptop and began searching for information on support for single mothers, housing assistance and educational grants for students who had to interrupt their studies. If Olivia was determined to make her own way, perhaps he could at least point her toward resources. A soft knock at his office door interrupted his research. Olivia stood in the doorway, Noah sleeping against her shoulder. "I wanted to thank you properly," she said. "Not just for last night, but for," she gestured vaguely, "all of this. I know it's not a simple thing inviting strangers into your home." "It was the right thing to do," Ethan replied, though even as he said it, he knew his motivations weren't entirely altruistic. There was something about Olivia's presence that had broken through the fog he'd been living in since Claire's passing. "The last thing someone said to me before Noah was born was that I'd never make it on my own," Olivia said quietly. "That I'd made the wrong choice keeping him. Sometimes I wonder if they were right." "They weren't," Ethan said with unexpected conviction. "I've only known you a day, but I can see how much you love him, how hard you're trying." Olivia's eyes filled with unexpected tears. "Some days trying doesn't feel like enough." "I know that feeling," Ethan admitted. The confession surprised him. He rarely spoke about his struggles as a widowed father. Something passed between them then, a recognition perhaps of shared experience despite their vastly different circumstances. Both were navigating waters they hadn't been prepared for, carrying responsibilities that sometimes felt overwhelming. "Daddy," Lily called from the living room. "Come see what Olivia did with the Christmas village." As they walked back together, Ethan was struck by how natural it felt, this unexpected Christmas arrangement. For the first time in 2 years, the hollowness in his chest had begun to fill with something that, if not quite hope, was at least possibility. Christmas passed in a gentle blur of lights, gifts, and unexpected warmth. Ethan had purchased last-minute presents for Olivia and Noah, brushing aside her protests with a casual, "It's just something small." In truth, he'd spent hours deliberating over the items: a cashmere sweater in a deep amber that matched her eyes, a silver-plated rattle for Noah, and art supplies, high-quality sketchbooks and pencils that Mrs. Jenkins had rushed out to procure on Christmas. Eve, after hearing about Olivia's artistic background, when Olivia unwrapped the art supplies, something shifted in her expression. A flash of the person she might have been before circumstances had forced her into survival mode. Her fingers had traced the edge of the sketchbook with a reverence that made Ethan's chest tighten. "I haven't drawn in almost a year," she'd admitted softly. Now, 3 days after Christmas, Ethan found himself lingering in the doorway of the sunroom, watching Olivia sketch. She sat cross-legged on the window seat, the winter sunlight streaming across her face. Noah sleeping peacefully in a bassinet beside her. The glass-enclosed room overlooking Central Park had been Claire's favorite space, a fact that should have made Olivia's presence there painful, but somehow didn't. She hadn't noticed him yet, and Ethan took the opportunity to observe her unguarded. Her brow was furrowed in concentration, her lower lip caught between her teeth as her hand moved across the paper with surprising confidence. Occasionally she would pause to check on Noah, her expression softening as she gazed at her son. It struck Ethan then how young she was, perhaps 23 at most, yet carrying responsibilities that would crush many twice her age. There was a resilience to her that he admired, a quiet determination that had become more evident as she relaxed into the temporary sanctuary of his home. "What are you drawing?" he asked finally, not wanting to startle her by remaining unannounced. Olivia looked up, a slight flush coloring her cheeks. "The park," she replied, turning the sketchbook to show him a rendering of the snow-covered landscape below. "It's beautiful from up here, like another world." Ethan moved closer to examine the drawing and was taken aback by its quality. It wasn't merely a competent sketch. It captured something essential about the scene, the interplay of light and shadow, the solemn dignity of bare trees weighted with snow. "You're talented," he said, genuinely impressed. "Is this what you studied at NYU?" Olivia nodded, her fingers tracing the edge of the paper. "Fine arts with a concentration in illustration. I had dreams of children's books, actually." Her expression turned wistful before everything changed. "Why can't you still do that?" Ethan asked, settling into a chair across from her. She gave him a look that suggested the answer should be obvious. "Single mother with no degree, no connections, no portfolio. The dream feels distant now, but not impossible," Ethan pressed, surprising himself with his investment in her aspirations. "So you could finish your degree, build a portfolio. With what resources?" Olivia asked, not unkindly but with the pragmatism of someone accustomed to having options narrowed by circumstance. "Childcare alone would—" She stopped herself, shaking her head. "I'm sorry. You've been so kind, and here I am sounding ungrateful." "You're being realistic," Ethan corrected. "But sometimes we need others to see possibilities we can't see for ourselves." Their conversation was interrupted by Lily bounding into the room, her face alight with excitement. "Olivia, will you draw something for me?" "Please." The transition in Olivia was immediate, the melancholy lifting as she smiled at the child. "What would you like me to draw?" "A puppy," Lily exclaimed, then immediately reconsidered. "No, wait, wings? Can you draw what wings would look like on me?" Olivia laughed, a sound Ethan realized he hadn't heard from her before. "Wings it is. Sit here beside me." Ethan watched as Olivia began a new sketch, Lily chattering beside her about what color her wings would be and how high she would fly. There was an ease between them that had developed remarkably quickly, as if they'd known each other far longer than a few days. The days following Christmas unfolded in a similar fashion. Olivia's initial plan to leave right after the holiday stretched as the city was gripped by a record-breaking cold snap. Ethan found reasons to suggest she stay just another day or two, reasons that became increasingly thin, but which Olivia, perhaps sensing his genuine concern, accepted with quiet gratitude. Mrs. Jenkins remained reserved, but had gradually softened toward Olivia, particularly after discovering the young woman washing her own clothes in the bathroom sink, rather than adding them to the household laundry. She at least used the proper facilities, the housekeeper had insisted, showing Olivia to the laundry room, with an expression that mixed exasperation and grudging respect. One evening, about a week after Christmas, Ethan returned from the office to find his apartment filled with music. Soft jazz playing from the speakers Claire had installed throughout the home. The sound stopped him in his tracks. Music had been absent from the space since her passing. He hadn't been able to bear it. He found Olivia in the living room, Noah sleeping against her shoulder as she swayed gently to the melody. Lily was curled on the sofa, drawing with the colored pencils that had been part of her Christmas gifts. "I hope you don't mind," Olivia said when she noticed him, reaching for the remote to turn off the music. "Lily mentioned your sound system, and Noah likes rhythm. It helps him sleep." "Leave it," Ethan said quickly. "It's nice." And surprisingly it was. The music that had once been a source of pain now filled the space with a warmth that felt like healing. He realized with a start that it had been nearly 3 weeks since he'd had a night plagued by insomnia and grief. Later that evening, after Lily had gone to bed and Noah was settled in his makeshift nursery, Ethan found Olivia in the sunroom again. She was working on a new drawing by the soft light of a table lamp, her concentration absolute. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the sketch. Olivia hesitated, then handed him the pad. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. It was a drawing of him and Lily at Rockefeller Center, the moment he had knelt to tie his daughter's shoe beneath the great Christmas tree. The detail was extraordinary, the gentle concern in his expression as he looked up at Lily, the delight on her face as she gazed at the lights above. But it was more than technical skill. Olivia had captured something essential about their relationship. The tender vigilance of a father determined to keep his child's world intact, despite his own pain. "When did you—" he began, then realized. "You saw us before we saw you." Olivia nodded, a slight flush coloring her cheeks. "I was there for hours, trying to stay warm. You both passed by, and I remember thinking how connected you seemed, even in your sadness." "My sadness," Ethan repeated, surprised by her perception. "It's in your eyes," she said softly. "Like someone who's carrying a weight others can't see." The observation was so accurate, it left him momentarily speechless. Claire had been gone for 2 years, and in that time Ethan had become adept at presenting a composed facade to the world. Colleagues, friends, even family commented on how well he was moving on. Only Lily and Mrs. Jenkins witnessed the quiet devastation that still ambushed him at unexpected moments. Yet this young woman, a virtual stranger, had seen through him at a glance. "My wife," he said finally. "Claire, she passed away 2 years ago. Sudden illness." The words were ones he'd repeated countless times, yet they still felt raw in his throat. Olivia's expression softened with understanding. "I'm so sorry, Ethan." "The holidays are the hardest," he admitted. She loved Christmas, the traditions, the decorations. "This year is the first time I've managed the tree and all the trimmings. For Lily's sake." "She would be proud of you," Olivia said with a certainty that caught him off guard. "Anyone can see how much you love your daughter, how hard you're trying to preserve joy for her." The validation from someone who carried her own considerable burdens moved him deeply. "Thank you for the drawing," he said, his voice rougher than he intended. "It's a gift to see ourselves through your eyes." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only when Noah stirred in his sleep, making the tiny snuffling sounds that Ethan had come to find oddly endearing. "The New Year's Eve charity gala is tomorrow night," Ethan said suddenly, the idea forming even as he spoke. "For the Children's Hospital Foundation. Would you consider coming with me?" "With us," he amended quickly. "Lily loves these events, and Mrs. Jenkins has already offered to watch Noah." Olivia's eyes widened in surprise. "A gala? I don't have anything to wear to something like that." "That's easily solved," Ethan replied. "Consider it thanks for the drawing. I can't accept an opportunity to network with potential clients for your illustration work." Ethan finished for her. "Several publishing executives serve on the foundation board. It could be a professional opportunity." He saw the internal struggle play across her face, pride warring with pragmatism, wariness with hope. Finally, she nodded. "If you're sure it wouldn't be an imposition." "It would be our pleasure," Ethan assured her, surprised by how much he meant it. The next morning, a personal shopper arrived with a selection of evening gowns, shoes, and accessories. Olivia's protests died on her lips when Lily clapped her hands in delight, insisting on a fashion show in the living room. Watching Olivia emerge in a deep emerald gown that transformed her from a wary young mother into a poised, striking woman, Ethan felt something shift inside him, a recognition of attraction he wasn't prepared for, accompanied by an immediate surge of guilt. It had been only 2 years since Claire, and Olivia was what? A guest? Someone he was helping? The confusion of his feelings made him retreat into careful politeness. If Olivia noticed his sudden reserve, she gave no indication. She selected the simplest of the gowns, a deep blue velvet with a modest neckline and flowing skirt, thanking the shopper with gracious warmth. That evening, as they prepared to leave for the gala, Ethan found himself lingering in the hallway, listening to Olivia's soft voice as she spoke to Noah in the guest room. "Mommy's going to a fancy party," she was saying, her tone light, but with an undercurrent of emotion. "Can you believe it? But I'll be thinking of you every minute, my little snowflake. And tomorrow, we'll start figuring out our next steps. We can't stay in this fairy tale forever." The words sent an unexpected pang through Ethan's chest. He realized with startling clarity that he didn't want them to leave. This young woman and her infant son, who had somehow, in just over a week, become woven into the fabric of his and Lily's lives. The thought was as confusing as it was compelling. When Olivia emerged, Noah cradled against her shoulder. Ethan pretended he'd just arrived in the hallway. "You look beautiful," he said truthfully, offering his arm as Mrs. Jenkins appeared to take the baby. "We'll be just fine," the housekeeper assured Olivia, her earlier skepticism replaced by a gruff tenderness. "You enjoy yourself. God knows you've earned a night out." In the elevator, Lily between them in her party dress, Ethan caught Olivia's reflection in the mirrored wall. She was staring straight ahead, her expression a complex mixture of anticipation and trepidation. He wondered what the evening held for all of them, and why it suddenly felt so significant. The Plaza Hotel glittered with New Year's Eve splendor as Ethan's car pulled up to the entrance. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the arriving guests, their finery sparkling against the backdrop of evergreen garlands and white roses. Olivia's grip tightened on the small clutch purse Ethan had insisted she borrow from his late wife's collection, an elegant silver piece that matched her shoes. "It's like a movie," she whispered, half to herself. Through the car window, she watched Manhattan's elite ascending the carpeted steps, women in designer gowns on the arms of tuxedoed men. "Are you ready?" Ethan asked, sensing her hesitation. Olivia took a deep breath. "I don't belong here," she admitted. "These people, they'll know." "Know what?" Lily piped up from between them, her face a picture of innocent curiosity in her pink party dress. Olivia smiled down at the child, her expression softening. "That I'm not used to fancy parties, sweetheart." "That's okay," Lily said with 8-year-old certainty. "Daddy says being kind is more important than being fancy." Ethan felt a surge of pride at his daughter's words. "Wise beyond her years," he murmured to Olivia as they exited the car. "And she's right. These events are more performance than substance. Just remember you have something most of these people don't." "What's that?" Olivia asked, adjusting the shawl around her shoulders against the cold. "Genuine talent," he replied, offering his arm. "And perspective." With Lily between them, they ascended the steps to the hotel's grand entrance. Olivia moved with a natural grace that belied her nervousness, her head held high despite the curious glances from other guests. Ethan found himself oddly proud to be escorting her, this young woman who had endured so much yet carried herself with such dignity. The ballroom was a winter wonderland of silver and blue, tables arranged around a central dance floor, where a live orchestra played classical arrangements of holiday music. Champagne flowed freely, and waitstaff circulated with trays of elaborate hors d'oeuvres. Lily's eyes widened at the spectacle, particularly the towering ice sculpture of an angel at the room's center. "Mr. Winters." A silver-haired man in an impeccably tailored tuxedo approached, hand extended. "Wonderful to see you. As this must be Lily, growing more beautiful every year." "Michael," Ethan greeted him warmly. "Lily, you remember Mr. Richardson? He works with Daddy." Lily nodded politely as Michael Richardson, Ethan's closest friend and business partner, bent to shake her hand with exaggerated formality that made her giggle. His gaze then shifted to Olivia, curiosity evident in his expression. "And who is this lovely companion?" he asked. "Olivia Hayes," Ethan said, placing a gentle hand at the small of her back. "Olivia, this is Michael Richardson, my partner at the firm and a board member of the Children's Foundation." "A pleasure," Olivia said, her voice steady despite the flush that had risen to her cheeks. Michael's eyebrows rose slightly, but his smile remained warm. "The pleasure is mine, Ms. Hayes. I don't believe I've seen you at one of our events before." "It's my first," she admitted. "Olivia is an artist," Lily announced proudly. "She draws the most beautiful pictures. She made one of me with wings." Michael's expression shifted from polite interest to genuine curiosity. "Is that so? What medium do you work in?" As Olivia explained her background in illustration, Ethan felt a tap on his shoulder. Turning, he found Victoria Harrington, one of Manhattan's most prominent socialites and a notorious gossip. Her crimson gown showcased both her impeccable taste and her penchant for commanding attention. "Ethan, darling," she purred, air-kissing both his cheeks. "How wonderful to see you out and about. It's been far too long." "Victoria," he greeted her with practiced politeness, "Happy New Year." "And to you." Her gaze slid to Olivia, who was still engaged in conversation with Michael and Lily. "I see you've brought a friend. How delightful." The slight pause spoke volumes. Ethan felt a protective instinct rise within him. "Olivia Hayes," he said firmly. "She's a talented artist with a focus on children's illustration." Victoria's perfectly sculpted eyebrows arched. "Hayes? I don't believe I know the family." "Not everyone in New York comes from a recognizable dynasty," Ethan replied mildly, though there was an edge to his tone that hadn't been there before. Victoria's smile remained fixed, but her eyes narrowed slightly. "Of course not, darling. How democratic of you." She leaned closer, lowering her voice to a confidential murmur. "Though I must say there's something familiar about her. Wasn't she the young woman they found on a bus bench last week? The one with the baby?" Ethan stiffened. "I'm not sure what you're referring to." "Oh, I think you are," Victoria said, her voice honeyed with false concern. "Catherine Morgan's driver spotted you. You know how staff talk." She patted his arm. "It's very charitable of you, Ethan. Very seasonal, though perhaps a bit excessive to bring her here." Before Ethan could respond, Olivia appeared at his side, her expression carefully composed, despite the heightened color in her cheeks that suggested she'd overheard at least part of the exchange. "Mr. Richardson was just telling me about the children's art therapy program the foundation supports," she said, her voice remarkably steady. "It sounds wonderful." Victoria's smile turned predatory. "Ms. Hayes, how lovely to meet you." "Victoria Harrington." She extended a hand adorned with diamonds. "I was just telling Ethan how inspiring it is that he's taken such an interest in community outreach, especially during the holidays." The implication was clear. Olivia was a charity case, not a guest. Something flashed in Olivia's eyes, a brief glimpse of the steel beneath her gentle exterior, before she schooled her features into polite neutrality. "The Foundation's work is certainly inspiring," she replied, smoothly sidestepping the bait. "Particularly the opportunities it provides for children to express themselves through art, regardless of their circumstances." Victoria's smile faltered slightly at Olivia's composed response. "Indeed. Well, I should circulate. So many people to greet." She turned to Ethan. "Do find me later, darling. We have so much to catch up on." As Victoria glided away, Olivia's shoulders sagged almost imperceptibly. "I should go," she whispered. This was a mistake. "No," Ethan said firmly, placing a hand on her arm. "Victoria Harrington doesn't decide who belongs here. But she's right, isn't she?" Olivia's voice was low, her eyes fixed on the glittering crowd. "I am the woman from the bus bench. The charity case." "You're my guest," Ethan corrected. "And Lily's. That's all anyone needs to know." Lily, who had been watching the exchange with the solemn attention of a child sensing adult tension, tugged at Olivia's hand. "Can we get some of those chocolate things?" she asked, pointing to a dessert table across the room. "They look yummy." Olivia's expression softened as she looked down at the child. "Lead the way, sweetheart." As they made their way through the crowd, Ethan watched Olivia interact with his daughter, the gentle guidance, the attentive listening, the spontaneous laughter they shared. Something twisted in his chest at the sight. It had been so long since Lily had a maternal figure in her life. Mrs. Jenkins was wonderful, but her relationship with Lily was fundamentally different. The evening progressed with fewer incidents, though Ethan noted the curious glances directed their way. Michael Richardson, to his credit, made a point of introducing Olivia to several publishing executives, speaking enthusiastically about her talent as if he'd known her work for years. Ethan found himself deeply grateful for his friend's tact and support. After dinner, as the orchestra began playing more contemporary selections, Lily dragged Ethan to the dance floor for what had become their tradition at such events, an exuberant, if somewhat ungainly, father-daughter dance that always left them both laughing. When they returned to the table, flushed and smiling, Lily immediately turned to Olivia. "Your turn," she declared. "Daddy's a really good dancer, even if he steps on toes sometimes." Ethan felt a flash of self-consciousness. "Lily, Olivia might not want to." "I'd like that," Olivia interrupted, her amber eyes meeting his with unexpected warmth. "If you would." The simple acceptance in her voice caught him off guard. He extended his hand, leading her to the edge of the dance floor as the orchestra began a slow waltz. Placing his hand at her waist, he was acutely aware of her closeness, the delicate scent of the hotel's complimentary perfume, the slight tremble in her fingers as they rested on his shoulder. "I should warn you," she murmured. "I've never actually danced like this before." "Just follow my lead," Ethan replied, guiding her into the first steps. "It's not so different from the way you were swaying with Noah the other night." Olivia smiled at the memory. "He's the only partner I've had recently, and he's not very technically proficient." Their laughter eased the initial awkwardness, and soon they were moving together with surprising harmony. Ethan was conscious of the eyes upon them, Victoria Harrington and her circle watching with barely concealed interest, but found he cared less than expected. There was something liberating about the moment, about holding this remarkable young woman who had entered his life so unexpectedly. "Thank you," Olivia said softly as they turned. "Not just for tonight, but for everything. You've shown Lily such kindness when we needed it most." "It's been my pleasure," Ethan replied, meaning it more than he'd anticipated. "Having you both with us. It's brought something back to our home, something that was missing." The vulnerability in his admission surprised them both. Olivia's eyes widened slightly, and Ethan felt a momentary panic that he'd overstepped. But then her expression softened, and she squeezed his hand gently in acknowledgement. The music ended too soon, and they returned to the table where Lily waited, her face alight with approval. The remainder of the evening passed in a pleasant blur of conversation and music. Olivia gradually relaxed, even engaging confidently with several of Michael's introductions, exchanging contact information with a children's book editor who seemed genuinely interested in her work. As midnight approached, champagne was distributed for the traditional toast. Even Lily received a flute of sparkling cider, which she held with exaggerated care. The ballroom dimmed as a large screen displayed the countdown from Times Square, the crowd joining in the final seconds. 10, 9, 8. Ethan glanced at Olivia, who was watching the celebration with an expression of wonder, as if witnessing a ritual from another world. 7, 6, 5. Lily bounced excitedly between them, her small hand clasped in Olivia's. 4, 3, 2, 1. "Happy New Year!" The room erupted in cheers and embraces. Without thinking, Ethan leaned down to kiss Lily's cheek, then turned to Olivia. Their eyes met in a moment of hesitation before he gently kissed her cheek as well, a gesture that felt both perfectly natural and startlingly significant. "Happy New Year," he said softly. "Happy New Year," she echoed, her eyes reflecting the shimmering lights above. The spell was broken by Victoria Harrington's voice, slightly too loud, carrying over the nearby celebrations. "Well, isn't that sweet? The architect and his rescue project. I suppose even charity cases deserve a kiss at midnight." Olivia's face flushed, the hurt visible in her eyes before she could mask it. Without a word, she set down her untouched champagne and walked quickly toward the exit. Ethan hesitated only long enough to ensure Lily was safely with Michael before following. He found Olivia outside on the hotel's terrace, arms wrapped around herself against the cold, snow falling gently around her. She looked ethereal in the moonlight, snowflakes catching in her dark hair like stars. "I'm sorry," he said, shrugging out of his tuxedo jacket and draping it over her shoulders. "Victoria is right," Olivia finished for him, her voice tight with emotion. "I don't belong in your world, Ethan. Tonight made that perfectly clear. That's not true, he insisted, turning her gently to face him. Victoria Harrington's world is not mine. Not anymore. Not since Claire. The unfinished sentence hung between them. Olivia's expression softened, understanding replacing hurt. You've been very kind to Noah and me. But kindness isn't... It can't be. It's not just kindness, Ethan said quietly, surprising himself with the admission. Having you and Noah with us these past days, it's woken something in me, in our home. Something I thought was gone forever. Olivia looked at him searchingly, snowflakes melting on her eyelashes. What are we doing, Ethan? What is this becoming? It was a question he wasn't prepared to answer. Not fully, not yet. But standing there in the snow, her face upturned to his, Ethan knew with sudden clarity that he wasn't ready for her to leave his life. I don't know, he admitted honestly. But I'd like to find out, if you would. The vulnerability in his voice seemed to reach her. Olivia's expression shifted, fear and hope battling in her amber eyes. People will talk. They already are. Let them, Ethan replied with newfound conviction. You don't owe explanations to Victoria Harrington or anyone else. Neither do I. A ghost of a smile touched Olivia's lips. Is that the official Winters family position? It's mine, he said, reaching tentatively to brush a snowflake from her cheek. And Lily's, I'm certain. The mention of his daughter seemed to center them both, a reminder of the innocence at the heart of their unexpected connection. Olivia leaned slightly into his touch, her eyes closing briefly. We should go back inside, she said finally. Lily will be wondering where we are. Ethan nodded, though part of him wished to prolong this moment, this quiet understanding in the snow, away from judgmental eyes and complicated realities. As they turned to re-enter the hotel, he kept his jacket around her shoulders, his hand resting lightly at the small of her back. It was a simple gesture of support, but it felt like a declaration. To anyone watching, to Olivia, and perhaps most significantly, to himself. January brought a brittle cold to New York City, the holiday warmth fading into the stark reality of winter. Yet inside Ethan's penthouse, something continued to bloom despite the season. The temporary arrangement with Olivia and Noah had extended without formal discussion, each day blending into the next until 3 weeks had passed since that fateful Christmas Eve. Ethan found himself inventing reasons to delay the inevitable conversation about next steps. When a pipe burst in the guest bathroom, flooding part of the room where Olivia and Noah were staying, he immediately offered his rarely used home office as a temporary nursery. It makes more sense than trying to find an apartment in this weather, he had reasoned, a justification that sounded thin even to his own ears. Olivia had accepted with a mixture of gratitude and wariness. Ethan recognized the conflict in her eyes, the relief of continued shelter warring with her fierce independence, her determination not to become dependent on his generosity. I've been researching affordable housing options, she told him one evening, as they sat in the living room after Lily had gone to bed. Noah was asleep in his bassinet nearby, his tiny chest rising and falling with peaceful regularity. There's a program for student mothers that might have an opening next month. Ethan felt an unexpected pang at her words. There's no rush, he said carefully. Lily loves having you both here, and the weather is still terrible. Olivia's expression softened at the mention of Lily. Over the weeks, a deep bond had formed between her and Ethan's daughter. Lily followed Olivia like a shadow, watching her draw with rapt attention, helping with simple tasks for Noah, bringing her treasured books to read together. It was a relationship that brought equal parts joy and concern to Ethan, joy at seeing his daughter so animated, concern about the inevitable heartache when Olivia and Noah eventually left. We can't stay indefinitely, Ethan, Olivia said gently. You know that. He did know intellectually, but something in him resisted the thought with surprising force. At least wait until spring, he suggested. Give yourself time to build a portfolio, make some connections. Michael said the children's book editor was genuinely interested in your work. Olivia smiled at the memory. Since the New Year's Gala, she had been working diligently on a series of illustrations, encouraged by the interest shown in her talent. Ethan had converted part of the sunroom into a makeshift studio, bringing in an easel and proper lighting. The space had become her sanctuary, filled with sketches and the soft music she preferred while working. I'm grateful for the opportunity, she acknowledged, More than I can express, but I need to stand on my own feet. For Noah, for myself. The determination in her voice was familiar now, that core of steel, beneath her gentle exterior that had first struck Ethan on Christmas Eve. It was one of the many qualities he had come to admire about her over these weeks of shared space and gradually shared lives. I understand, he said finally, but know that you're welcome here for as long as you need. Both of you. The following Saturday dawned clear and cold, the sun creating diamonds of the snow in Central Park. Olivia had been working on a commissioned piece for a children's literacy foundation, her first paid work since Noah's birth, secured through one of Michael's connections. The project had energized her and she'd suggested a walk in the park to celebrate its completion. "Fresh air will do us all good," she'd said over breakfast, Noah cradled in one arm as she somehow managed to eat with her free hand, a skill Ethan had watched her perfect over the weeks. Bundled against the cold, they made a picture-perfect family as they strolled through the park. Ethan pushing Noah's stroller, a recent purchase he'd insisted on as a household necessity. Lily skipping ahead, Olivia pointing out the sculptural quality of snow-laden branches that she wanted to capture in her next series of drawings. They stopped at a playground where Lily immediately headed for the swings. Ethan moved to follow, but Olivia touched his arm. "I'll watch her," she offered. "You stay with Noah, his blankets need adjusting." It was a small moment of domesticity that caught Ethan by surprise, this easy division of attention between the children, the unconscious partnership that had developed between them. He watched as Olivia helped Lily onto a swing, pushing her with attentive care, while simultaneously pointing out a cardinal that had landed on a nearby branch. "She's a natural mother." The voice beside him was so unexpected that Ethan nearly jumped. Turning, he found himself face to face with an elegant older woman, bundled in a cashmere coat, her silver hair styled in an immaculate bob. Something in her features struck him as familiar, though he couldn't immediately place her. "Excuse me?" he said, instinctively adjusting Noah's blankets. The woman's gaze was fixed on Olivia and Lily, her expression unreadable. "I always knew she would be. Even when she was small herself, she had that quality, that attention to others." Understanding dawned with shocking clarity. "You're Olivia's mother," Ethan said, studying the woman more carefully. The resemblance was there in the high cheekbones, the shape of the eyes, though this woman's were a cool blue rather than Olivia's warm amber. "Margaret Hayes," she confirmed with a slight nod. "And you're the architect who took her in. Word travels in certain circles." There was no warmth in her tone, no gratitude for his care of her daughter and grandson, only a clinical assessment that made Ethan's protective instincts flare. "Olivia is a remarkable young woman," he said carefully, "and Noah is a beautiful, healthy boy. You should be proud of them both." Margaret's expression hardened. "Proud of what?" "A daughter who threw away her education and family for a reckless mistake. Who chose to struggle in poverty, rather than accept the sensible solution we offered." "You mean adoption?" Ethan clarified, keeping his voice low despite the anger building within him. "Giving up her child?" "It would have been best for everyone," Margaret said firmly. "Olivia had opportunities, potential. Now she's reduced to charity cases and temporary situations. Is that the life you think she deserves?" Before Ethan could respond, he spotted Olivia turning from the swings, her smile fading as she recognized her mother. The color drained from her face, and she quickly said something to Lily before walking toward them with measured steps. "Mother," she said when she reached them, her voice carefully controlled. "What are you doing here?" Margaret Hayes regarded her daughter with cool assessment. "I was having brunch at the boathouse with the Whitmores. Their daughter just made partner at her law firm. The path you might have taken." Olivia flinched but maintained her composure. "I see. And you recognized me from across the park?" "Don't be dramatic, Olivia. Patricia Whitmore's nephew works for the foundation that hosted that New Year's gala. She mentioned seeing you there with..." Her gaze flicked dismissively to Ethan. "Your benefactor. I simply happened to see you while walking back to the car." Ethan felt a surge of protective anger. "Mrs. Hayes, your daughter." "It's all right, Ethan," Olivia interrupted gently, placing a hand on his arm. She turned back to her mother. "Is there something you wanted to say to me?" Margaret looked pointedly at Noah, sleeping peacefully in his stroller. "I see you're still determined to make this mistake work." My son is not a mistake, Olivia said, her voice quiet but firm. And yes, I am making it work. I have a commission with a literacy foundation. I'm building a portfolio. Living on a stranger's charity, Margaret countered. Accepting help while I get back on my feet, Olivia corrected. There's no shame in that. Margaret's expression remained unmoved. Your father and I made our position clear when you left. It hasn't changed. When you're ready to be sensible without the complication, our door is open. The casual dismissal of Noah as a complication made Ethan's jaw clench. But it was the pain in Olivia's eyes that truly gutted him, a wound so deep and familiar he could feel it echo in his own chest. My children are my family now, Olivia said, her voice finally breaking. If you can't accept that, then we have nothing more to discuss. Margaret's eyes widened slightly at the plural. My children, her gaze shifting briefly to Lily, who was still playing on the swings, oblivious to the tension. Something like comprehension dawned in her expression, followed by a dismissive sniff. I see you found a replacement family. How convenient for everyone. With that parting shot, she turned and walked away, not once looking back at her daughter or the grandson she had never acknowledged. Ethan watched Olivia's face as her mother retreated, the way she held herself together through sheer force of will, chin high despite the slight tremble of her lower lip. Only when Margaret was out of sight did her shoulders sag. I'm sorry you had to witness that, she said quietly. I'm not, Ethan replied, surprising them both with his vehemence. Now I understand exactly what you've been up against, and how incredibly strong you are to have made the choices you did. Olivia looked at him with such vulnerability that it physically hurt. Am I? Strong? Sometimes I wonder if she's right, if I've just been selfish and stubborn, if Noah would have had a better life. No, Ethan said firmly, taking her hand. Look at him, Olivia. Look at how peaceful he is, how healthy, how loved. You did that, against impossible odds. You gave him the most important thing any child needs, a parent who would sacrifice everything for them. Tears filled her eyes then, tears she had somehow kept at bay through the entire confrontation. I would, she whispered. I'd give anything for him. I know, Ethan said softly. That's what makes you extraordinary. Before either could say more, Lily came running over, her cheeks flushed with cold and exertion. Who was that lady? She asked, looking between them curiously. She looked kind of like you, Olivia. Olivia quickly wiped her eyes, composing her features into a smile that broke Ethan's heart with its bravery. That was my mother, sweetheart. Lily's brow furrowed. Why did she leave so fast? Doesn't she want to meet Noah or me? The innocent question hung in the air, painful in its perception. Ethan was about to intervene when Olivia knelt to Lily's level, her response gentle but honest. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that are hard to understand, she explained. My mother and I don't agree on some important things, so we don't see each other anymore. Lily considered this with solemn attention. That's sad, she concluded. Families should be together. Yes, Olivia agreed, her voice thick with emotion. They should. The rest of their outing passed in subdued quietness, the joy of the morning dimmed by the encounter. Ethan watched Olivia carefully, noting the way she held herself slightly apart, lost in thought. He recognized the posture of someone reassessing their path, questioning decisions made and roads taken. Back at the penthouse, Olivia retreated to the sunroom with Noah, closing the door gently but definitively behind her. Ethan respected her need for space, distracting Lily with a baking project that left the kitchen dusted with flour and filled the apartment with the scent of chocolate chip cookies. It was late afternoon when Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway, clutching one of her watercolor paintings. Can I show this to Olivia now? She asked. I made it for her. Let's see if she's ready for company, Ethan suggested, wiping his hands on a dish towel. They found Olivia sitting cross-legged on the sunroom floor, Noah asleep in his bassinet beside her. She had been crying. Her eyes were reddened, her cheeks flushed, but there was a calmness to her now, a resolution that hadn't been there earlier. We made cookies, Lily announced, undeterred by adult complexities. And I painted this for you. She thrust the watercolor toward Olivia, who accepted it with gentle hands. Ethan looked over her shoulder at his daughter's artwork, a snowy landscape with a cozy house, and 4 stick figures holding hands beside a Christmas tree. The figures were labeled in Lily's careful printing. Daddy, me, Olivia, and baby Noah. "It's our family now, right?" Lily asked, her expression hopeful. "That's what you told the park lady. You said we're your family." Olivia's composure finally broke, tears spilling down her cheeks as she gathered Lily into a fierce hug. "Yes," she whispered. "That's what I said." Ethan stood frozen in the doorway, witnessing a moment so raw and honest it took his breath away. The painting, the embrace, the simple acceptance in his daughter's question. It crystallized everything that had been building in their shared home these past weeks. Later, after Lily had gone to bed, Ethan found Olivia in the kitchen, warming a bottle for Noah's evening feeding. He moved beside her, wordlessly taking over the task as she rubbed her tired eyes. "I meant what I said to my mother," she said finally, "about you and Lily being family to us now." Ethan tested the formula on his wrist, a gesture he'd learned from watching her. "I know," he said softly. "We feel the same way. But it complicates everything," Olivia continued, voicing the concern that had been evident in her expression all afternoon. "If we stay much longer, it will only get harder for all of us when Noah and I eventually leave." The thought sent a physical pain through Ethan's chest. "What if you didn't have to leave?" he asked, the question emerging before he could fully consider its implications. Olivia looked at him with surprise. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Ethan hesitated, searching for the right words. "This arrangement, it's working for all of us. Lily adores you both. You have space to work on your art. Noah is thriving." "We can't be your charity case forever, Ethan," Olivia said, though there was no bite to her words. "I need to stand on my own." "Not charity," Ethan clarified. "Partnership. Of whatever kind makes sense. I'm not presuming." He stopped, frustrated by his inability to articulate the complex emotions swirling inside him. "I just know that the thought of you both leaving feels wrong." Olivia's eyes softened with understanding. "For me too," she admitted quietly. "But I've learned the hard way that dependence can become a cage, even when offered with the best intentions." The wisdom in her words struck Ethan deeply. He handed her the warmed bottle, their fingers brushing in the exchange. "Then we'll find a balance," he promised. "A way for you to have your independence without losing what we've built here." Something shifted in Olivia's expression. Hope tempered with caution, longing with practicality. "One day at a time," she suggested. Ethan nodded, accepting the wisdom of her approach. One day at a time. As they stood in the kitchen, the city lights twinkling beyond the windows, Ethan felt a sense of possibility that had been absent from his life for 2 years. Whatever shape their future took, he knew with certainty that Olivia and Noah had become essential parts of it, no longer temporary guests, but integral pieces of a puzzle he hadn't realized was incomplete. February arrived with unforgiving winds and record snowfall that blanketed the city in crystalline white. The weather mirrored the calm that had settled over Ethan's penthouse in the weeks following Olivia's encounter with her mother. They had fallen into a comfortable rhythm, Ethan at his firm during the day, Olivia working on her commissioned illustrations in the sunroom, their evenings spent in the gentle chaos of family dinners and bedtime routines that now included both children. Olivia had secured 2 more small commissions through the connections made at the New Year's Gala. The modest income seemed to restore something crucial to her sense of self, a tangible progress toward the independence she valued so fiercely. She had opened a savings account, carefully setting aside funds toward future housing, while contributing what she could to household expenses, despite Ethan's protests. "It matters to me," she'd insisted when he tried to refuse her first contribution, "even if it's small. Please understand." He did understand, recognizing in her determination the same pride that had made her wash her clothes in the sink that first morning. It was one of the qualities he most admired about her, that unwavering dignity that refused to be diminished by circumstance. One evening in mid-February, Ethan returned from work to find Lily and Olivia in the kitchen, flour dusting their clothes and laughter filling the air as they attempted to make heart-shaped cookies for Valentine's Day. Noah was propped in his infant seat on the counter, his dark eyes tracking their movements with the increasing awareness of a 3-month-old. The scene stopped Ethan in the doorway, his briefcase still in hand. It was so achingly domestic, so filled with simple joy, that for a moment he couldn't move, caught between the pain of remembering similar moments with Claire and the unexpected happiness of this new configuration. "Daddy!" Lily exclaimed when she spotted him. "We're making surprise cookies, but now you ruined the surprise." "I'll pretend to be very shocked tomorrow morning," Ethan promised, setting down his briefcase and hanging his coat on a kitchen chair. Olivia wiped her hands on a dish towel, a smudge of flour on her cheek that Ethan found unreasonably endearing. "We got a bit carried away," she admitted, gesturing to the chaos of baking supplies. "I can see that," Ethan replied, fighting the urge to brush the flour from her face. These impulses had been occurring with increasing frequency, small moments of wanting physical connection that he carefully managed. Their arrangement remained purposefully undefined, a delicate balance that neither seemed ready to disturb. Later that night, after the cookies were cooling on racks and the children were asleep, Ethan found Olivia in the living room, curled on the sofa with her sketchbook. Without looking up, she shifted slightly, making space for him in what had become their evening ritual, these quiet hours when they talked about their days, shared concerns about the children, or simply existed in comfortable silence. "Michael called," Ethan said as he settled beside her. "The editor from Brightwood Publishing was impressed with your sample illustrations. They want to discuss a picture book contract." Olivia's head shot up, her eyes wide. "Are you serious?" "Completely," Ethan confirmed, enjoying her reaction. "He wants to set up a meeting next week." Her smile was radiant, transforming her entire face. "Ethan, that's incredible." "You're incredible," he corrected gently. "Your talent is undeniable. They'd be fools not to recognize it." A flush rose to her cheeks at the praise. "I couldn't have done this without you. Without all of this." She gestured vaguely to encompass the apartment, the stability it represented. "You would have found a way," Ethan said with conviction. "That's who you are. I just made the path a little smoother." Olivia looked at him for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. "Why did you do it?" she asked finally. "Take us in that night? Keep finding reasons for us to stay? It's more than simple kindness, isn't it?" The question caught him off guard with its directness. Ethan considered his answer carefully, aware that whatever he said would alter the careful equilibrium they had established. "The night we found you," he began slowly, "I was in a darker place than I'd been in months. The holidays without Claire, it was like losing her all over again." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "When Lily saw you and Noah, when she immediately wanted to help, it was the first purely good thing I'd felt in a long time. Bringing you home wasn't just about helping you, it was something I needed without realizing it." Olivia's expression softened. "And now?" "Now," Ethan said, his voice low, "it's about all of us, what we've become together. I can't imagine this place without you and Noah anymore. I don't want to." The admission hung between them, more honest than he'd intended. Olivia reached out tentatively, her fingers brushing his in a touch that felt both innocent and profound. "I feel the same way," she whispered. "And it terrifies me." Before Ethan could respond, a cry from the nursery broke the moment, Noah's distinctive wail signaling hunger or discomfort. Olivia withdrew her hand and rose quickly, the conversation suspended as she attended to her son. Ethan remained on the sofa, his thoughts in turmoil, wondering what might have been said if they hadn't been interrupted. The following morning brought a shift in their carefully structured routine. Lily, usually the first awake and bouncing with energy, didn't appear for breakfast. When Ethan went to check on her, he found his daughter flushed and listless in her bed, her forehead burning with fever. "My throat hurts, Daddy," she whispered, her voice raspy. Concern immediately flooded him. Lily rarely became ill, and the pediatrician had warned about a particularly virulent strain of flu circulating through the city's schools. He called the doctor immediately, then returned to his daughter's side with a cool cloth for her forehead. "Is Olivia making breakfast?" Lily asked, her eyes glassy with fever. "I want Olivia." "She's feeding Noah," Ethan explained, trying to hide his worry. "I'll get her soon." But before he could leave, Olivia appeared in the doorway, concern etched on her face. "Mrs. Jenkins called to say she's running late, and I thought I heard—" Her words trailed off as she took in Lily's condition. Without hesitation, she moved to the bed, her hand gentle on the child's forehead. "Oh, sweetheart, you're burning up." "It hurts," Lily whimpered, leaning into Olivia's touch. "I know, love. Olivia soothed, her voice taking on a quality Ethan recognized from her interactions with Noah, tender but calm, reassuring without dismissing the pain. Let's get you something cool to drink, and then maybe a story while we wait for the doctor. Would you like that? Lily nodded weakly, her small hand reaching for Olivia's. The trust in the gesture made Ethan's throat tighten. As the day progressed, Lily's condition worsened. The pediatrician diagnosed a severe case of influenza, prescribing rest, fluids, and careful monitoring. By evening, her fever had spiked to concerning levels, and she drifted in and out of fitful sleep, occasionally mumbling incoherently. Ethan sat vigil by her bed, alternating cool compresses and checking her temperature with mechanical precision that barely contained his rising fear. Memories of Claire's sudden illness, the rapid decline, the hospital vigil, the helplessness, threatened to overwhelm him. He was so focused on maintaining his composure that he barely registered Olivia's presence until she placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You need to rest," she said softly. "I'll stay with her for a while." Ethan shook his head. "I'm fine." "You're exhausted," Olivia countered, her tone gentle but firm. "And you have that presentation tomorrow. Go lie down for an hour. I promise I'll wake you if anything changes." Before he could protest further, Lily stirred, her eyes opening slightly. "Olivia?" she called, her voice weak. "Can you stay?" "I'm right here, sweetheart," Olivia assured her, settling on the edge of the bed. "Sing the Snowflake song," Lily requested, reaching for her hand. "The one you sing to Noah." Olivia glanced at Ethan, a silent question in her eyes. He nodded, recognizing defeat. 1 hour, he conceded, rising from the chair he'd occupied for most of the day. "Call me if her fever goes up at all." As he moved toward the door, he heard Olivia begin to sing, a soft lullaby about snowflakes falling gently to earth, finding their perfect place to rest. Her voice was unexpectedly lovely, a soothing alto that seemed to calm Lily immediately. Ethan paused in the hallway, listening as his daughter's restless movements quieted. He meant to lie down briefly on his bed, but exhaustion claimed him the moment his head touched the pillow. When he woke with a start, the bedroom was dark and the clock showed nearly 3 hours had passed. Panic shot through him as he bolted upright, rushing back to Lily's room. The scene that greeted him stopped him in the doorway. Olivia was curled on the bed beside Lily, one arm protectively around the child. Both were asleep, Lily's breathing deeper and more regular than it had been all day. A quick touch to his daughter's forehead confirmed that her fever had finally broken. Relief washed over him, followed by a wave of emotion so powerful it drove him to the balcony doors. He stepped outside into the cold February night, gulping the winter air as he struggled to process what he was feeling. The image of Olivia holding Lily, the natural way she had comforted his daughter, the absolute trust in Lily's response, it had triggered something profound in him. For the first time since losing Claire, Ethan found himself facing not just grief for what was lost, but hope for what might still be possible. The realization brought unexpected guilt. Was it disloyal to Claire's memory to imagine a future with someone else? To see another woman mothering their daughter? The questions had no easy answers, but as he stood in the cold night air, Ethan felt something shift within him, a permission he hadn't been able to grant himself until now. When he returned to Lily's room, Olivia was awake, carefully disentangling herself from the sleeping child. She looked up as he entered, her expression questioning. "Her fever broke," she whispered. "About an hour ago." "I meant to wake you, but—" "Thank you," Ethan said simply, the words inadequate for the depth of his gratitude. They moved quietly to the hallway, closing Lily's door partway to hear if she called out. "You're good with her," Ethan said. "Better than good. She trusts you completely." Olivia's smile was tinged with something like sadness. "She's easy to love." The simple statement hung between them, laden with implications neither was ready to fully address. Ethan was about to respond when a sharp cry from the nursery cut through the night. Noah's cry, but with an unusual quality that immediately had Olivia rushing to his side. Ethan followed, concern mounting, as he found Olivia lifting a clearly distressed Noah from his crib. The baby's face was flushed, his tiny body radiating heat. "He's burning up," Olivia said, her voice tight with fear. "The flu. He must have caught it from Lily." Ethan touched the baby's forehead, alarm coursing through him at the intensity of the fever. At 3 months old, Noah was far more vulnerable to complications than Lily. "We need to get him to the emergency room," he said decisively. "Infants with high fevers need immediate attention." Olivia nodded, her face pale with worry as she quickly wrapped Noah in a blanket. "What about Lily? We can't leave her alone." "Mrs. Jenkins," Ethan said, already reaching for his phone. "She has a key. She can stay with Lily while we take Noah to the hospital." The next hour passed in a blur of frantic activity. Mrs. Jenkins arrived, still in her nightclothes beneath her coat, her concern evident despite her usual brisk manner. Ethan carried Olivia's hastily packed diaper bag while she cradled Noah, now crying weakly against her shoulder. The night was bitter cold, snow swirling around them as they hurried to the car. "My international presentation," Ethan suddenly remembered as they pulled away from the curb. "It's in 6 hours." "Your meeting," Olivia echoed, her eyes widening. "Ethan, it's the Singapore project. You've been preparing for weeks." The Singapore development was the largest commission his firm had ever pursued, a project that could elevate Winter's architectural design to international prominence. The presentation to the investors couldn't be rescheduled. They were flying back the same day. "I'll call Michael," Ethan said, making the decision without hesitation. "He can handle it." "But you're the lead architect," Olivia protested. "You said yourself that they specifically requested you." Ethan glanced at Noah, now whimpering softly in Olivia's arms, then back at the road. "Some things are more important," he said simply. "My family needs me here." The word family slipped out naturally, without premeditation. He felt rather than saw Olivia's reaction, a soft intake of breath, a shifting beside him. Neither commented on it as they drove through the deserted pre-dawn streets, the urgency of Noah's condition taking precedence over any emotional revelation. The pediatric emergency room was mercifully quiet when they arrived. Noah was seen quickly, diagnosed with influenza and mild dehydration that required monitoring. The doctor's concern was evident as he explained the risks of high fevers in infants, recommending admission for observation. "Just overnight," he assured them, noting the alarm on Olivia's face, a precaution given his age. As Noah was settled into a tiny hospital crib, monitors attached to his small body, Ethan stepped outside to call Michael about the presentation. His partner was understanding, but couldn't entirely hide his concern about the potential impact on their bid for the project. "Family emergency," Ethan explained simply. "You know the presentation as well as I do. You'll be fine." When he returned to the hospital room, he found Olivia sitting beside Noah's crib, her hand through the bars to maintain contact with her son. The vulnerability in her posture broke his heart. "You should go," she said without looking up. "Your presentation is being handled," Ethan interrupted gently, pulling a chair beside hers. "I'm staying." Olivia turned to him then, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Why?" The question encompassed so much more than his decision to miss the presentation. Ethan knew she was asking about all of it. Why he had taken them in. Why he continued to create space in his life for them. Why he now sat beside her in a hospital room at 4 in the morning, as if it were the only place he could possibly be. "Because when it matters," he said softly, "you choose the people you love." Simple as that. The words hung between them, an admission he hadn't planned but couldn't regret. Olivia's breath caught, her eyes searching his face as if looking for certainty. "Ethan," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. Before she could continue, Noah stirred in his crib. A small whimper, drawing her attention immediately back to her son. The moment passed, but something had shifted between them, a threshold crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. As dawn broke over the city, painting the hospital room in pale gold light, Ethan watched Olivia finally succumb to exhaustion, her head drooping against the edge of Noah's crib. With gentle care, he adjusted her position so she wouldn't wake with a stiff neck, then settled back in his own uncomfortable chair for the vigil ahead. Looking at the sleeping woman and the infant whose tiny hand was curled around her finger even in sleep, Ethan felt a certainty settle over him. Whatever came next, however they defined their relationship, whatever challenges they faced, he knew with absolute clarity that his life was now irrevocably entwined with theirs. Spring arrived in New York with a gentle persistence, coaxing crocuses through the thawing earth in Central Park and warming the city streets with tentative sunshine. 4 months had passed since that fateful Christmas Eve, when Ethan and Lily had discovered Olivia and Noah at the bus shelter, 4 months that had transformed all their lives in ways none could have anticipated. Noah's brief hospitalization had marked a turning point in Ethan and Olivia's undefined relationship. The night spent together at the child's bedside, Ethan's quiet declaration, and the realization that they had become a family in all but name had shifted something fundamental between them. Though neither had put precise words to the change, their interactions carried a new depth, a tacit acknowledgement of feelings that had grown too significant to ignore. In the weeks following Noah's recovery, Olivia had thrown herself into her work with renewed purpose. The connection with Brightwood Publishing had blossomed into a contract for a children's book, her first with the potential for a series if sales met expectations. The advance, while modest, represented a crucial step toward the financial independence she valued so deeply. Ethan had watched her progress with a pride that surprised him in its intensity. Her determination, her talent, her unwavering focus on creating security for her son, these qualities had only deepened his admiration for her. Yet he found himself increasingly conflicted about her eventual goal of finding her own place. The thought of the penthouse without Olivia and Noah had become almost unimaginable. Lily had blossomed in their presence, her lingering sadness over Claire's absence gradually giving way to the joy of this new family configuration. Even Mrs. Jenkins had fully embraced them, developing a particular soft spot for Noah, whom she now referred to as our little man with unabashed affection. One evening in early April, Ethan returned home to find the penthouse unusually quiet. A note on the counter in Olivia's elegant handwriting explained that she and Lily had taken Noah to the park to enjoy the spring weather and would return in time for dinner. The unexpected solitude gave him a rare moment to reflect on the changes of the past months. He wandered through the rooms, noticing all the ways Olivia and Noah had become woven into the fabric of his home. Noah's toys, tastefully organized in wicker baskets in the living room, Olivia's art supplies arranged on a desk in the sunroom, family photos that now included all 4 of them, displayed alongside treasured images of Claire. In Lily's room, he found a new drawing pinned to her bulletin board, clearly Olivia's work. It depicted Lily with butterfly wings, soaring above the city skyline, her face alight with joy. The skill was evident, but it was the loving attention to detail that made Ethan's chest tighten with emotion. As he moved through the apartment, a plan began to form in his mind, one he had been considering for weeks but hadn't found the right moment to propose. With sudden decision, he reached for his phone and made a call. "Michael? It's Ethan. I need a favor, and it needs to happen quickly." 3 hours later, as the spring sun began its descent behind the Manhattan skyline, Ethan led a blindfolded Olivia through the streets of Soho, Lily skipping excitedly ahead of them, while Mrs. Jenkins followed with Noah in his stroller. "Ethan, this is ridiculous," Olivia protested, though her laughter belied any real annoyance. "Where are you taking me?" "Just a few more steps," he promised, guiding her carefully around a corner. "Lily, are we ready?" "Ready, Daddy," his daughter confirmed with barely contained excitement. They stopped in front of a storefront with a newly installed awning, its forest green fabric gleaming in the early evening light. Ethan positioned Olivia directly in front of the entrance, then carefully removed her blindfold. For a moment she blinked in the sudden light, confusion evident in her expression as she focused on the storefront before her. Then she read the elegant gold lettering on the awning, Hayes Gallery and Studio, and her hand flew to her mouth. "Ethan," she whispered. "What is this?" "Open the door," he encouraged gently. With trembling fingers, Olivia turned the handle and stepped inside. The space that greeted her was modest but beautifully appointed. Polished hardwood floors, warm lighting, and pristine white walls currently adorned with framed illustrations. Her illustrations? Professionally mounted and displayed. "I don't understand," she said, turning to Ethan with wide eyes. "It's yours," he explained, watching her reaction carefully. "A gallery for your work and a studio in the back where you can create." He hesitated, aware of her fierce independence. "It's not a gift exactly. It's an investment in your talent, in your future. The advance from Brightwood is your stake in the business." Lily could contain herself no longer. "We hung up all your pictures," she exclaimed, tugging Olivia toward a display of the children's book illustrations. "And look, there's a special corner for the book readings you're going to do." Indeed, a cozy nook had been created with small chairs and cushions, perfect for children to gather for story time. Every detail had been considered, from the elegant display cases for original artwork to the practical workspace in the rear studio. Michael helped with the business plan. Ethan continued as Olivia moved through the space in stunned silence. "The location is prime for the family demographic your work appeals to. And the apartment upstairs," he gestured to a spiral staircase in the corner. "It's small but completely renovated. 2 bedrooms, modern kitchen, walking distance to a good preschool for when Noah's older." Olivia stopped then, her expression shifting from wonder to something more complex. "An apartment?" "Independent living space," Ethan clarified carefully, "if and when you decide that's what you want." Mrs. Jenkins, who had been quietly observing from near the entrance, stepped forward with Noah in her arms. "Though if you ask me, that would be a terrible waste of perfectly good rooms at the penthouse that would just sit empty and make us all miserable." Her blunt assessment drew surprised laughter from everyone. Olivia took Noah from Mrs. Jenkins, holding him close as she continued to survey the gallery. "This is overwhelming," she admitted. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll accept it," Ethan said, moving to stand beside her. "Not as charity, but as recognition of your talent. Every artist needs a space to showcase their work, to connect with their audience. This can be yours." He could see the struggle in her expression, pride warring with practicality, independence with opportunity. "The financial arrangement is sound," Ethan assured her. Michael ran the numbers. "With your advance as initial capital and projected sales from the gallery, it's a viable business model. I'm a minority investor, nothing more." This wasn't entirely true. He had purchased the building outright, but the business structure was legitimate. Olivia would own controlling interest in the gallery operation, with profits from sales funding, the business costs and providing her income. Lily, impatient with the adult conversation, tugged at Olivia's hand. "Can we see the apartment too?" "There's a room all ready for Noah with stars on the ceiling." "Stars on the ceiling?" Olivia echoed, allowing herself to be led toward the staircase. The apartment above the gallery was indeed small but exquisitely renovated, with large windows that flooded the space with natural light. The nursery had been painted a soft blue, with glow-in-the-dark stars arranged in actual constellations across the ceiling, a detail Ethan had insisted upon, remembering Olivia's mention of wanting Noah to learn about the stars someday. As they moved through the apartment, Ethan watched Olivia's face carefully, trying to gauge her reaction. The emotional turmoil was evident in her expression, gratitude mixed with wariness, hope with hesitation. When they returned to the gallery, Mrs. Jenkins tactfully suggested taking the children for ice cream, leaving Ethan and Olivia alone among the displayed artwork. For a long moment, neither spoke. "It's too much," Olivia finally said, her voice soft but steady. "It's exactly enough," Ethan countered, "for what you deserve, for what you're capable of." She turned to face him directly, her amber eyes searching his. "Why, Ethan? Why would you do all this?" It was the question he had been both anticipating and dreading, the one that required complete honesty. That would lay bare feelings he had been carefully managing for months. "Because I love you," he said simply. "I love the person you are, the mother you are to Noah, the friend you've become to Lily. I love your strength, your talent, your unwavering determination." He paused, gathering courage for the most difficult part. "And I understand your need for independence. This," he gestured to the gallery around them, "is my way of trying to reconcile those things. A space that's entirely yours, that honors your talent and gives you the security you deserve, while still—" He hesitated. "While still keeping me in your life," Olivia finished softly. Ethan nodded, suddenly vulnerable in a way he hadn't allowed himself to be since Claire's passing. "I don't want to pressure you. If you need the apartment, it's yours, no strings attached. If you prefer to stay at the penthouse, that door remains open. Either way, the gallery is your business to run as you see fit." Olivia moved slowly through the space, trailing her fingers along the edge of a display case, her expression thoughtful. "When I first met you," she said finally, "I was so certain you were just another wealthy man easing his conscience with temporary charity. I was determined to take only what we absolutely needed, to leave as soon as possible. She stopped before a large framed illustration, the one she had created of Ethan and Lily beneath the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree. But then I saw how you were with Lily, how you listened to her, respected her, even in your grief. I saw a man trying so hard to create happiness for his daughter while carrying his own pain. Turning back to face him, she continued, "These past months, you've given Noah and me more than shelter. You've given us dignity. You've never once made me feel like a charity case or a burden. You've treated my work, my goals as valuable. And you've done it all while respecting my need for independence. Because those things matter to you," Ethan said simply. "And you matter to me." Olivia's eyes filled with unexpected tears. "The night Noah was in the hospital, when you stayed despite your presentation, you said something I've been thinking about ever since." "What was that?" Ethan asked, though he remembered every word of that night with perfect clarity. "You said, 'When it matters, you choose the people you love.' I've never had someone choose me before, not my parents, not Jason. Everyone has always expected me to be the one who sacrifices, who compromises." She moved closer to him, her expression open in a way he had rarely seen. "I love you too, Ethan. I think I have for months, but I've been afraid of depending on someone again, afraid of losing myself in your life, afraid of what happens if it doesn't work." "And now?" he asked, hardly daring to hope. A small smile touched her lips. "Now I'm still afraid, but I'm beginning to think some risks are worth taking." Ethan reached for her hand, his heart pounding with an intensity he hadn't felt in years. "So where does that leave us?" "In the beautiful gallery you created for me," she replied, squeezing his fingers gently. "With choices I never thought I'd have." "And which choice are you leaning toward?" he asked, scarcely breathing as he awaited her answer. Olivia looked around the space once more, her expression thoughtful. "I think I'd like this to be my workplace, somewhere I can build my career, connect with readers, establish myself professionally." She turned back to him, her eyes meeting his directly. "But home is where Lily is, where you are, if you're sure there's room for us." The relief and joy that flooded through Ethan was almost overwhelming. "There has always been room for you," he said softly, "from the moment you stepped through the door." She moved into his arms then, the embrace they had both been holding back for months, finally given permission to exist. Ethan held her close, marveling at how perfectly she fit against him, how right it felt to cross this threshold at last. "What about Lily?" Olivia asked, her voice muffled against his shoulder. "Claire will always be her mother. I would never try to replace her." "Lily adores you," Ethan assured her, "and she has room in her heart for both the mother she lost and the one who came into her life when she needed it most." Olivia drew back slightly to look at him, vulnerability evident in her expression. "And you? Is there room in your heart for both?" The question touched on what had been his greatest internal struggle, the fear that loving Olivia somehow diminished his love for Claire. But in this moment, with Olivia in his arms, Ethan finally understood the truth that had been evolving within him. "Love isn't finite," he said softly. "Claire will always be part of me, part of our family. But loving you doesn't diminish that, it honors it. She wanted me to be happy, to create joy for Lily. You've helped make that possible." Tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks at his words. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me, for giving Noah and me a chance at the family we both needed." Their moment was interrupted by the return of Mrs. Jenkins with the children, Lily's face adorably smeared with chocolate ice cream as she bounded into the gallery. "Did you tell her, Daddy?" "Did you ask?" she demanded, practically vibrating with excitement. Ethan laughed, keeping one arm around Olivia as he faced his daughter. "I was getting to that part, sweetheart." "Ask me what?" Olivia inquired, glancing between them with curiosity. Ethan took a deep breath, then reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. "This isn't how I planned to do this," he admitted. "I thought maybe after the gallery opening, or somewhere more romantic than a storefront in Soho." Understanding dawned in Olivia's eyes as he opened the box to reveal a ring, not a traditional diamond solitaire, but an elegant emerald surrounded by smaller diamonds in a vintage setting. "It was my grandmother's," Ethan explained. "Claire had her own ring that her parents gave her, so this one has been in safekeeping. When I told Lily what I was considering, She said green was the right color because it matched your eyes when you're happy. Olivia's gaze shifted to Lily, who was watching with undisguised anticipation. "You're okay with this, sweetheart?" she asked softly. Lily nodded enthusiastically. "I asked Santa for a family," she declared. "And he brought you and Noah on Christmas Eve. It just took Daddy a really long time to figure it out." A laugh bubbled up from Olivia's throat. Surprised, joyful, and slightly tearful, Mrs. Jenkins, who was discreetly wiping her own eyes while bouncing Noah on her hip, made a sound suspiciously like a sniff. Ethan knelt on one knee, holding the ring up to Olivia. "I know it hasn't been that long," he acknowledged. "And we can wait as long as you need. But I also know with absolute certainty that you are the person I want to build a future with. You and Noah have brought life back into our home, love back into our lives." He took a steadying breath, suddenly nervous despite the signs that her answer would be favorable. "Olivia Hayes, will you marry me? Will you and Noah officially become part of our family, in every way that matters?" Olivia's eyes shimmered with tears as she looked from Ethan to Lily, then to Noah in Mrs. Jenkins' arms, and finally back to the ring gleaming in the gallery's soft lighting. "Yes," she whispered. Then more firmly, "Yes, we would be honored to be your family." Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to embrace her as Lily cheered and Mrs. Jenkins dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Noah, sensing the excitement, let out a delighted squeal that made them all laugh through their tears. Later that evening, after a celebratory dinner at Ethan's favorite restaurant and bedtime routines for exhausted children, Ethan and Olivia stood together on the penthouse balcony. The spring night was mild, the city lights twinkling beneath them like earthbound stars. "A year ago," Olivia said softly, "I was terrified every day. Terrified of failing Noah, of never finding stability, of making the wrong choices." Ethan wrapped an arm around her shoulders, drawing her close against the slight chill in the air. "And now," she turned to face him, her expression peaceful in the moonlight, "now I understand that family isn't just about blood or obligation. It's about choice. Every day we choose each other." She glanced down at the ring on her finger, then back up at him. "I choose you, Ethan. I choose Lily. I choose this life we're building together." "And I choose you," he replied, kissing her forehead gently. "You and Noah, every day without reservation." As they stood together overlooking the city where their unlikely story had begun, Ethan marveled at the journey that had brought them to this moment. A chance encounter on a cold Christmas Eve, a simple act of kindness, had somehow given them all a second chance at family, at wholeness, at love. The following Christmas Eve, almost exactly 1 year after their first meeting, Ethan and Olivia were married in an intimate ceremony in their home. Lily, resplendent in a dress she had helped design, served as flower girl, while Noah, now walking with endearing unsteadiness, carried the rings on a small pillow with Mrs. Jenkins' careful guidance. The penthouse was transformed for the occasion, evergreen garlands and white roses, creating a winter wonderland that honored both the season and the anniversary of their meeting. Olivia's gallery had flourished in the months since its opening, her children's book receiving acclaim from critics and readers alike. A second book was already in production, and the studio space had become a popular venue for children's art classes that Lily proudly helped organize. As they exchanged vows in front of the Christmas tree, the casco, same one Lily had insisted on decorating with akka, snowflake ornaments in honor of Noah's nickname, Ethan found himself reflecting on the remarkable journey that had brought them to this moment. "In you," he told Olivia as part of his vows, "I found not just love but courage. The courage to open my heart again, to embrace joy without guilt, to build something new without forgetting what came before." Olivia, radiant in a simple gown of winter white, responded with equal emotion. "You saw me when I was invisible," she said softly. "You offered kindness when it would have been easier to look away, and in doing so, you taught me that accepting help doesn't diminish strength, it multiplies it." After the ceremony, as their small gathering of friends celebrated around them, Ethan found Lily standing by the window, looking out at the snow that had begun to fall over the city. "Happy, sweetheart?" he asked, kneeling beside her. She nodded, her expression thoughtful beyond her years. "Mommy would be happy too," she said with simple certainty. She always told me to look for the helpers when things were scary. Olivia was our helper, and now she's our family. Ethan hugged his daughter close, his heart full beyond measure. That's exactly right, he agreed. Across the room, Olivia caught his eye over Noah's head as she helped the toddler navigate the crowd. The love in her gaze, the sense of belonging that had grown between them,